Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivaradari. Gopijana Balabha Girivaradari. Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivaradari. Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Jasodanandana Vrajajanaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivadacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. Continuing from yesterday evening, yesterday evening we spoke about Shabari and her very special relationship with Lord Ramachandra, and of course which was the fruit of her relationship with the sages, and particularly sage Matanga. And during that evening discussion yesterday, there was mention was made of a theme that appears in the Aranyakanda, that is a pattern where Ram meets sages, encounters demons, to overcome the next difficulty, and then meets more sages and encounters another demon to meet the more sages, the next difficulty. So specifically, the two after Jatayu, there's a female demoness who Lakshmana disfigures, and then meeting Kabandha, and then meeting Shabari, and of course Hanuman. There's multiple strains and themes and messages of the surrendering process that are woven into Ramayana. And that's one of them. So surrendering has some obstacles, and that's our own contaminations due to long association with the material energy. There's material contamination. And the focus for this theme, for these evening programs, is going to be how Ram helps us go beyond and confront and go beyond our own material contamination through his pastimes revealed in the Ramayana. Were you able to send this document out? You'll send it now. Okay. There's a document that you'll be receiving shortly. The document is Bhaktivinoda Thakur explaining, both in Krishna Samhita and in Chaitanya Shikshamrita, the significance of Krishna's killing of demons in Vrindavan. Are you familiar with that description? No? We're going to, assuming this virus thing ends, that's going to be part of, the major part of the theme of the youth gathering this summer. The connection between chanting and Krishna's destroying the demons in Vrindavan. Specifically, Bhaktivinoda Thakur teaches, when the Lord performs pastimes in this world, there's of two categories: his Nitya Leela and his Nimitta Leela. It's being translated as his occasional pastimes. His occasional pastimes include something that's really easy to understand: the birth pastime. In Goloka, there's no birth pastime. But here in the earthly realm, there's a birth pastime. In the spiritual realm, there's no demons. In the earthly realm, there's demons. And there's occasional pastimes here, and the occasional specific to Krishna's killing of the demons in Braja. This little article Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote in these books will explain the principle that to help us become qualified for Braja Prem, Krishna kills demons in Vrindavan, that the pastime itself is removing different obstacles to achieve Braja Prem. So it's the worldly pastime to help the devotee, us, aspiring devotees at least, to overcome shortcomings or obstacles. And the first one, the first demon that Krishna kills is who? Putana. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, I'm not going into a little bit of detail, but we'll stop, because false teachers and false teachings, the false guru, is an obstacle on the path of achieving Braja Prema. So Krishna kills Putana, indicating through that pastime, and hearing that pastime helps us overcome that obstacle. False teachings, false teachers, and then etc. He says there's, in Krishna Samhita, he says there's 18, and then he adds 2 more, specifically. In Chaitanya Shikshamrita, and then identifies which are those events and which of the obstacles on the path of bhakti, braja bhakti, are there within for each one of us. And so say it again. It's not just like this is a nice story, this is symbolic of that. These are actual pastimes, and Krishna is actually performing them. And by performing them, Krishna is helping those who are not yet pure, like us, become pure, become qualified for Braja Prem. There's potencies within the pastimes, and hearing the pastimes, remembering the pastimes, etc., that will help us overcome those obstacles. There's potencies in Krishna's pastimes. And similarly, Sri Vaishnava Acharyas have commented extensively on Ramayana, and like with Shabari, prior to meeting Shabari, one of the demons that was killed was Viradha. And Viradha, according to the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, represents hypocrisy. So we're going to hear, starting this evening, the Dandak forest or Aranyakanda pastimes of Ram, where he encounters different demons. Not all of them we're going to discuss, but some of the prominent ones, and one of the first ones is Viradha. Hypocrisy has a very simple meaning. It's like say one thing, do another thing. That's a hypocrite. You present yourself as if this is a standard by which you have faith, or which you live, and it's not really true. That's hypocrisy. And one of the behaviors of hypocrisy is ignorance. One poses oneself as a person of knowledge of virtue and criticizes others as not knowing the difference between right and wrong. It's like knowledge in the mode of ignorance. And that arises from the demoniac nature. In the mode of ignorance, there's knowledge according to the modes, and this hypocrisy principle is an atheistic principle that people live by, and they don't mind at all living by thinking this is right when it's wrong, and that's wrong when it's right. Specifically in the pastime, Viradha accuses Rama of hypocrisy in 2 ways: how he's dressed, and that the 2 of them are with one woman in a forest. So he accuses them of being hypocrites and false sadhus and irreligious, as if he knows the standard of what is dharma. And dushta mana, that's a phrase that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta used, but a wicked mind, distorted by hypocrisy and false understanding of what's right and wrong. So that's Viradha, and the pastime we're going to hear from Ramayana has some details. I'll take help from the acharyas to take the language of Valmiki and explain, in some cases at least, what's the significance of some particular language. Like one of the words in Valmiki's text is suvesha. Vesha means your garments, your dress, the clothing that you wear. And suvesha means the garments that Kaikeyi gave to Ram and Lakshman and Sita. They looked like they came right from the dry cleaners. They were well pressed, and they didn't look like forest garments. And it was disconsonant with the attire and the appearance of the attire, fresh pressed forest attire. And that they were carrying bow and arrow, wearing garments of an ascetic. So that's like, this disconsonant. So, but Suvesha, so that's an example. And we'll touch on some other examples that I wouldn't know without the benefit of the acharyas. So the section begins shortly after Ram decides to leave Chitrakoot for various reasons. One of those reasons being that the sages in Chitrakoot were in a lot of anxiety because Ram, Lakshman, and Sita were staying in Chitrakoot, and the Rakshasas in the Dandak forest knew that, and so the sages felt they were at risk because the Rakshasas were adversaries of virtue, and Ram is the emblem of virtue. So they didn't say anything, but they started to just pick up and leave. And Ram saw that, and so he asked them why, and then they're sages, so they had to tell him why they're leaving. And so Ram considered, rather than they leave, I should leave. And so he left Chitrakoot, and that marks the transition from Ayodhya Kanda to Aranya Kanda. So when he enters into the forest, the first scene that opens is a very detailed description of a hermitage, when it seems like it's like many hermitages that sound like really fantastic places. Although they're in the forest and they're engaging in life of austerity, it's not just a forest. They have cottages, they have piles of kusa grass for the yagya, they have yagya stali areas where sacrificial ladles and ghee and water and flowers and very, very, very clean. The residential areas are kept very, very, very clean, and clotheslines hanging up their tree bark cloth or clothing to dry. And because of their presence, one can hear continuous chanting of Vedic mantras in the air. Because of their presence, the trees are replete with flowers and fruits, so that the fragrances of the flowers, the chirping of the birds and forest animals are feeling completely safe and protected, and so they roam about freely without fear. And although it's forest life, it sounds pretty fantastic. Their eating habits is very controlled because they don't have sumptuous food, but there's abundant in part because of their presence in the forest. But just eating berries and roots and fruits, and living ascetic life, engage in sacrifice, engage in meditation, engage in a life of purity. And their object of their sacrifice and their object of their meditation is the personality of Godhead. Commonly very elderly, very thin from that lifestyle, and very peaceful, radiant. The hermitage is described in Valmiki Ramayana as being radiant like the sun or fire, their bodies and the whole place. So when Ram comes to such a hermitage, he detaches his bowstring from the bow because he doesn't want to cause any fear in the birds or the wildlife in the area. And as he comes into their hermitage, they rise. Now these are sages, and he's coming as a Kshatriya, but living like a ascetic. And they do a full Vedic reception. They stand, they offer hymns of praise and rituals and receive him with all splendor and pomp. Because it's not just how they would receive any other guest. They would do that for any other guest, but they do with such devotion because they're described as Atmaramas, just like Shukadev Goswami. They could understand he's the personality of Godhead. And they're staring at him with the language of Valmiki Ramayana as unblinking eyes. And they offer, just like the gopis would see Krishna with unblinking eyes. So they're fixed in their devotion to the personality of Godhead. Now, some of you have heard, I'm sure, of the different categories of gopis in the Rasa Dance section, Canto 10, Chapter 29. There's purports in Krishna book and in the Bhaktivedanta purports, or the categories of gopis. There's 4 categories, and one of those categories is the Rishicharis, gopis. So that's these people. They're the Dandak forest sages. Now, it's not described in the Bhagavatam. It's described in Padma Purana specifically that these sages, when they saw the beauty of Ramchandra, his elegant features and charm and everything, they're completely beyond the bodily conception of life, and they saw Lord Ramachandra as the object of their love. So they didn't speak anything about it, but they held that wish in their heart. Now there's some further elaboration. I don't know the scriptural reference for it, but at some point there's some expression they wish to have the Ram as their beloved, and he explains that can take place in my next appearance, and I'll have many such beloveds. And so they become the Rishichari gopis, super elevated souls having a conjugal attraction for Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So same people, when he comes into the Dandak forest, they offer prayers, and in their prayers, they're extolling his divinity in very explicit terms, and as the king. And as the king, they're sages, but they're appealing to the king for protection. And they say in different ways, this is Valmiki's text, that whether in the capital city or in the forest, you're still the king. And the king has power, and the king has duties to extend protection. So please extend your protection to us. So they have this combination of seeing his divinity and having feelings towards the personality of Godhead in that way, but also in the something very similar. Reading carefully how Krishna receives Sudama. There's different moods, even during that same day that they spent together. One is just friends. The other is the personality of Godhead, saying that this pleases me very much. Nothing pleases me more than this. So, and the role of a king to a Brahmana, and he's worshipping the Brahmana. There are different moods that Krishna exhibits in that exchange with Sudama, and similarly there's different moods that are exchanged with these sages, and the sages towards the personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra. They're remarking about his features. They understand that his will is indomitable and he will be successful. And they have understood that he has come to extend his kindness as well as his protection. They're giving their blessings to him, even though they know he's the personality of Godhead. But, just in case, because it's what Brahmanas do. They give their blessings. Brihat Bhagavatamrita comments in this, not specifically about Ram's entering into the Dandak forest, but the sages have attained the state of purity. And we know that state of purity as the Vasudeva state. Just like when Krishna appeared in the mind of Vasudeva, he appeared in the mind of Vasudeva because his mind was pure. That's where one of the places where that Vasudeva state is described. There's several others in the Srimad Bhagavatam where one's consciousness is pure. Then when one's consciousness is pure, it invites the personality of Godhead to come. If one has pure consciousness, what does that mean in practical terms? Doesn't mean you're going to go back to Godhead. And this discussion in Brihat Bhagavatamrita says what it means is the personality of Godhead will come to you, as the personality of Godhead came to see the sages in the forest. They had become purified through lifetimes of undergoing purificatory processes. And now in that purified state, Ram is giving his darshan. And they're recognizing the mercy that has come. So in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, it goes like this. When Gopakumar finally makes it to Goloka Vrindavan, and he sees Krishna's returning from the herding of the cows with the cowherd boys off in the distance. Initially, he just sees the dust raised by the hooves of the cows. And then he can make out the figures of the cows and the cowherd boys. And then in the front of the cowherd boys, there's Krishna. And he recognizes Krishna and he starts running, and Krishna starts running to him. And Krishna embraces him very strongly after fainting and coming back to external consciousness. And he speaks to Radharani's brother, Sridham. Here is my dear friend Sarup, the sun who shines on the lotus of your family. It's known that Radharani was a worshipper of the sun god. So Sarup, is the sun who shines on the lotus of your family. So he's so happy. Krishna extended himself to Gopakumar. And the message here is, this is what's happening in this exchange in the Dandak forest. It's a sample. It's something like the description that comes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya is leaving Puri, heading on a South India tour, and he encounters different people, and Krishna Das says this is just a sample, and this happened everywhere. So similarly, this is a sample, this visiting this hermitage of the sages, and it's a repeat of the theme. Ram entered the Dandak forest with one pretext, but his real purpose was giving his association to the sages in the forest that had purified hearts, that had attained the Vasudeva state of consciousness. He was giving them his personal association. Very, very, very merciful. The forest dwellers were amazed to see Ram's bodily beauty, loveliness, youthfulness, and the delicate nature of his body, his gracefulness, his attractive attire, and astonishing postures. So commentary says that just like Shukadeva Goswami had no material attraction, these sages have no material attraction, but they became fascinated by the attractive features of Ramachandra, which means the form of Ramachandra is all spiritual, just like Shukadeva Goswami became attracted to Krishna, indicating pastimes of Krishna and the topics of Krishna are fully spiritual. And according to Rupa Goswami's teachings, similarly, these features are all stimulations of ecstatic love. In the language of nectar devotion, udipan, or stimulations of ecstatic love. So they're seeing the personality of Godhead before them, their ecstatic love skyrocketed, just seeing the form of Lord Ramachandra. The forest dwellers stared at Sita, Lakshman, and Ram with unblinking eyes, considering them wonderful beings. And they speak in language, the commentary says, that's similar to Krishna's words with Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita section of the Bhagavatam. Krishna says, when elevated persons speak with Vedic hymns and their songs of praise, although they deal in esoteric terms, I'm very pleased because of their devotion and their confidential descriptions. Now, not all the Vedas are like that, but there's some portions of the Vedas that are very, besides they're hard to understand, esoteric in one sense, but the glorification is very beautiful. And Krishna is saying to Uddhava, the beauty of their language is something that attracts me very much. Again, there's different parts of the Vedas that carry that in particular. The sages, after receiving them very nicely and giving nice words, they made arrangements for elaborate meal and, of course, forest fare, but elaborate meal, and a place of residence, a straw hut for them to stay in. After making these offerings, the sages said, "O Rama, the king is the protector of the righteous, the shelter of the people, the most renowned, the most worshipable, the most worthy of respect, the one who is the bearer of the rod of chastisement, the preceptor, and the fourth part of Indra." The Sanskrit is Indrasya eva chaturbhaga, the fourth part of Indra. They understand that he is Paramatma, something like Queen Kunti speaks. He is Paramatma, the Lord of their heart, who has now come before them. Or something like Dhruva, the Lord of his heart, now very mercifully came before him. So they're very elevated persons, and this is their understanding. We, being residents of your kingdom, deserve to be protected by you. Whether you reside in the city or in the forest, you are our king, the Lord of the people. O king, having renounced punishment of others, having conquered our anger and our senses, and having no wealth other than austerity, we should always be protected by you, as a fetus is protected by its mother. So now that's their words, and I wanted to commentary is very nice. It helps churn the nectar of the topic. So I'm going to read directly commentary. O Rama, you may say, do you desire, as the result of your meditation and efforts, to reach me? No, no. It is a dangerous path where the slightest slip may ruin all. Hence, we seek your protection on the sole strength of residing in your dominion. You may say, be it so, I will attend when my exile is over and I go back to Ayodhya. To this the sages reply, you are our king of all. Please keep us away from the Rakshasas that stand between us and the bliss of meditating upon you and your worldly enchanting beauty. While other kings protect their subjects through might of intellect and strength of armies, your personal valor is such that you are powerful in your capital as well as in the forest. You may say, your yogic powers can do this for you more easily. The sages reply, we are vowed to a life of tapas and have conquered the wrath that ruins it. Our senses are under perfect restraint, hence we do not have it in us to curse these Rakshasas. Because we have surrendered ourselves entirely to you and have no will apart from yours, we have no right to defend ourselves even if we can curse them. We can only lay ourselves at your feet, either for happiness or distress. Again, are we not amongst your subjects? Have we any other refuge? You may ask, how have you deserved my protection? The sages reply, our surrender is our only wealth, our only tribute to you, and receiving it from us, you are bound to protect us in return. So they continue the rest of the evening in hospitality of the sages in various ways. Comment is made that before Rama's elaborate festival for them. But Ram felt more contented and satisfied and pleased by the loving devotion of the sages in the Dandak forest. So they spent their evening, and early the next morning, after finishing their morning duties, they set off, continuing in their journey into the forest. So that's just like a grain of rice in the pot of rice. It's again and again scenes like this would take place. Ram moving into a hermitage's ashram and experiencing what he experienced, and them experiencing him, and so forth. So now he's going further into the forest, and he's finding a stretch of the forest where everything seems to have been destroyed. The difficult to find drinking water, birds weren't not singing. This intense sound of crickets, thousands of crickets making their cricket sound. And then, in other words, the symptoms of inauspiciousness even in the forest. And then off in the distance, seeing Viradha. And the description of Viradha is like long description, very frightful description. Humongous personality, like a mountain peak, with recessed eyes, huge belly, roaring loudly. The whole forest was trembling, moving, stomping as he moved, carrying a spear, and hanging from his spear were carcasses of lions and tigers and deer and jackals, and 10 of these and 12 of those, and humongous personality, dressed in animal skin splattered with blood and fat, roaring, misshapen features, and they see one another. So Viradha sees them, and he's enraged. Who's come to my forest? And he comes charging at them. And he quickly, unexpectedly, he grabs Sita, lifts Sita in the air, and challenges them in saying, I'm going to take this Sita as my wife. Doesn't call her by name. And you will be dead very soon in battle, and I'll devour you. He gave himself by name, without even having to ask. Who are you, you sinners, living in the forest with a woman alone, carrying bows and arrows, as if you're warriors, living as ascetics? And this is, calling them hypocrites. So now, again, this is commentary to help churn the topic. After grabbing Sita, why did Viradha run away? And one explanation is when he came near to Ram and Lakshman, he was defeated by their effulgence. And he also ran because he felt he was not accepted by them. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapila Dev teaches, chapter 29, teaches Devahuti, devotional service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, angry, and who is a separatist is considered to be in the mode of darkness. Prabhupada explains, to act under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master is pure devotional service. But if one has a motive for personal sense gratification, his devotional service is manifested differently. So he is having direct interaction with Ram. It's not but he's not in the mood of devotional service. He's taking up Sita and planning to kill Ram and Lakshman. So he who has no guide and no sense of standards, accusing them of not following standards. That's just the hypocrisy point. And he couldn't understand the divinity of Ram. Later he'll explain, but he's been covered by a curse to become a demon. Here's what happened. Previously, he was a Gandharva. And as a Gandharva, he was entrusted by Kuvera to give protection and take care of a damsel who he liked very much. Ramba was her name. And he took his Gandharva skills and was charming the lady. And Kuvera understood what he was doing. So, this is demoniac. You become a demon. So he lost his Gandharva position, had become a demon. And in that covered demon position, demons don't understand anything. What's right is wrong, what's wrong is right, and who the personality of Godhead is, even in his presence, won't be able to understand. So he wasn't able to understand. There's some detailed description of the meaning of his name. Vi means it's negative or without, and Radha, without devotion, or not worshipper, not worthy of worship, not worthy of respect. But claiming, speaking to Ram as if, you're an adharmic person, you're sinful. This is this hypocrisy feature, specifically arising from the nature that he's covered. Now, covered of understanding higher truths, certainly understanding the absolute truth of the personality of Godhead or God, and then not understanding himself and not understanding other things right and wrong, but speaking as if he was. So, back to the theme of these presentations, Ram is going to kill Viradha, but it's going to be done in a difficult way. Because when Viradha explains, again, Ram asks, "Who are you?" He's already told, "I'm Viradha. That's who I'm known by." So again, he asks who he is. Well, there's another section in between. When Ram sees Sita being carried away by Viradha, he turns to Lakshman and starts to lament. Oh! And Lakshman has to remind him that of his ancestry. He's an ancestor of Kakutsa. Kakutsa is in the Ikshvaku line, and as a king in the Ikshvaku line is particularly was a valiant, heroic soldier, fighter. So you're in the line of Kakutsa, and remember, you have this power. Remember, you're the all-powerful supreme, which is a little surprising for Lakshmana to say that, because the acharyas make reference to when Vishvamitra Muni first came to Parshuram said in the presence of Dasarath that This is only fitting because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the Almighty One. So it's not exactly like the resident of Vrindavan, where they can't see the Personality of Godhead as the Personality of Godhead. This is a different mood. It's Ayodhya mood, where there's some sense of divinity at the same time, an intimacy, but it's not the same intimacy as the residents of Vrindavan, where they can't even see him as the Personality of Godhead. Even he shows his divinity. So that's Lakshmana's reference here. You're the Personality of Godhead. Why? Stop lamenting. And let's get Sita. Let's not lament. Yeah. So the mood changes. And rather than just seeing Sita being carried away, they start attacking Viradha. And just before that, important. Viradha said, "You asked me who I am, now who are you?" And they say that we're Kshatriyas, and that's why we're carrying swords, and why we have bow and arrow, because we're Kshatriyas. We're sons of Dasarath. So he's responding to this hypocrisy challenge. We're carrying swords and we're carrying arrows because we're Kshatriyas. And he's responding point by point with the truth. The strength, one of the principal measures of Ram's strength, from beginning to the middle to the end, is his abiding by truth. So that is his strength, at least in terms of Dharma. His strength, of course, is because he's Bhagavan. But in the role of the ideal king, his strength is upholding Dharma, which rests upon upholding the truth. He whose prowess never fails. So there's a lot to be said in how we as devotees are to find strength in the truth, especially in Kali Yuga, where it's reckless, falsity, and just doing some research today on the age of Kali is spoken of again and again by Prabhupada as the age of quarrel, but 50% of the time he says it's quarrel and hypocrisy. So the strength of Ram is truthfulness, not hypocrisy. And in the age of Kali, it's hypocrisy. And that Ram's killing of Viradha, or Viradha standing for hypocrisy, is the hypocrite. It's like what fault finding is. Fault finding is, according to Bhaktisiddhanta, one who's engaged in fault finding is only revealing that their own heart is honeycombed with the same fault. It's a nice expression. That is to say, one who is pure can see things as they are, but they don't engage in fault finding. Rather, they see how they can be of service to someone, as circumstances permit, how they can be of service to someone to help elevate their consciousness. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's compassion and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, the Sankirtan movement. That's our life as contemporary Vaishnavas. And here's Ram encountering this terrible looking personality, Viradha, and he wants to relieve Viradha of his hypocrisy and his contamination, his covering, so that he can see correctly instead of seeing incorrectly. So he goes on, Viradha, I'm the son of a Gandharva named Java, and my mother is Shatarada, who is an Apsara, and everyone on earth calls me Viradha. And so he reveals this. By practice of austerities, I became Viradha. I fell to this earthly realm as a demon. And I underwent austerities, severe austerities, got a benediction from Brahma that I can't be cut, pierced, or killed by any weapon of this world. So now they've done some mutual introductions after their chivalrous talk back and forth. And now he's changing, instead of I'm going to eat you, said, you get away quickly, so I'll let you go. But I'm keeping Sita. I'm keeping this lady. Ram now becomes really angry. And he speaks something very strongly. Oh, fallen person, cursed be you. For the sake of a measly and vile purpose, you are seeking death. Just wait. You will get your desired death on the battlefield. I shall not let you live. Commentary says, persons who are hypocrites and persons that are engaged in coveting, as Tumburu was coveting Ramba, and now as Viradha is coveting Sita, persons who are sinful like that don't understand the consequence of their sinful conduct. They just see opportunity for sensual pleasure, and that's all they see. And they don't see consequences, unfortunately. So he's speaking something meaningful to Viradha, and he wants to relieve him of those consequences. So he strings his bow, fires so many arrows, and they pierce the body of Viradha. And what happens? Viradha just yawns, and the arrows fall to the ground. Now, some of the arrows are fiery arrows, and so when they fall to the ground, they burn the grass because they're fiery arrows. But he then, because he's gotten this benediction, he can't be killed by these weapons. And then he runs, having his body been pierced, he can feel the pain. So he drops Sita, and he runs, and with his two hands, he picks up Ram, and he picks up Lakshman, and starts carrying them away. Ram says to Lakshman, let's observe what he's going to do next. Kind of like a warrior strategy plan. But when Sita sees all of that going on, she calls out loudly, Ram, don't leave me here. Viradha, better you take me. This is a forest filled with wild animals and all kinds of dangers. Better you take my life. And seeing Sita in that condition of distress, then the strategy changes. And he decides, let's break his arms. So you break his right one, I'll break his left one. They break his arms. The only way to kill him, and tells Lakshman, you dig a pit and we'll toss him in the pit and bury him alive. When Ram touches the neck of Viradha with his foot, the curse that he would fall is then lifted just by the touch of Ram's foot. And when the curse is lifted, then he can understand who Ram is, because before he couldn't understand. And then he says some very wonderful words of praise to Ram. I did not recognize you earlier because of my illusion. I now know you are Rama, the fine son of Kaushalya. And this is the highly fortunate Sita, princess of Vaideha. And this is the famous Lakshmana. I am in fact the Gandharva Tumbaru. I was cursed by Kuvera to enter the body of a horrible Rakshasa. When I was showing interest in Ramba, instead of being attentive to serving my master Kuvera, when I pleaded with him for mercy, he replied, when Rama, the son of King Dasarath, kills you in conflict, you will return to heaven and regain your original condition. By your mercy, I am freed from this terrible curse. I shall now return to my abode. The righteous and austere sage Sharabhanga, who is as effulgent as the sun, lives 12 miles from here. Go to him right away, and he will give you good advice. After throwing me in a pit, go happily. This is the ancient tradition for Rakshasas who die. Those who are interred in a pit attain everlasting worlds. So the covered consciousness is lifted suddenly by the touch of Ram's foot. So we had this discussion yesterday evening. The hostess asked this question: how can we get such benefit like this? Because we're householders and we're not so qualified. So I made mention of a particular purport, which you can make available to others that are attending this gathering. It's a really nice purport where the pastime is in relation to Gajendra. And as Gajendra was relieved by the contact of Vishnu, as Dhruva was relieved by the contact of the conch of Vishnu, so here the foot of Ram is relieving Viradha. He's like heavily covered. So we also have, Prabhupada writes, we also have the same opportunity through deity worship, through the hearing process. The touch of the Supreme Lord is accessible to us in these ways, and we can become completely relieved, not incompletely, but completely relieved of all misgivings. So the good fortune is made available primarily for us in these ways. We take advantage and we can be relieved of our sins and misfortune and covering and all of those things. Yeah. So they continue, they bury Viradha, They forcefully threw the fierce, terrified, and roaring Rakshasa into the pit. Now that sounds horrible, but it was to relieve him of that Rakshasa body. And as a result of relieving him of that Rakshasa body, they're ready to carry on now in their journey into the forest. Because remember, they just left Chitrakoot. They're going into exile for 14 years, meeting sages, encountering demons, and relieving the demons of their tendencies, their demoniac tendencies, by their contact. So just hearing just like the pastimes of the personality of Godhead, because I've been discussing the Dhruva story over and over again. Let's just make that reference. Narada instructs Dhruva, in addition to doing his austerities and chanting of his mantra and worshipping a deity form of the Lord, he specifically says, remember always the pastimes of the personality of Godhead in its different incarnations. So by doing what we're doing during this time leading up to Ram Navami, and this evening included, there's purifying potencies that we may not understand. Just by hearing of the pastimes of the personality of Godhead, it's purifying. It's elevating of consciousness. Just like earlier this afternoon, there was some of the Western people that Pratibhahu was working with. One of them is a young American, and he's just like some short period of time, 4 months or something like that, has been taking an interest in reading Bhagavad Gita. And he wanted to know what's the difference between Krishna consciousness and Christ consciousness. And one answer that I gave is that it's one is less mature, one is more mature stage of the same thing. So here, there's no. What are the pastimes of the personality of Godhead that exist in Christianity, or his form, qualities, activities, loving exchanges? I mean, it's not. The detail is not there. But when the detail is there and one hears and chants and remembers and describes and so forth, just as we're doing, there's very great spiritual potency. And become attracted to the all-attractive becomes possible because the attractiveness of the all-attractive is there within that sound vibration. Specifically to this pastime, our acharyas are telling us the obstacle that's within, the obstacle of hypocrisy, is confronted by the pastime. There's potencies within hearing this pastime that can help us. So that's a faithful narrator and one who's hearing the narration. That's the understanding. That's the benefit, one of the benefits, specific benefits of hearing this particular pastime. And then we'll go on with other pastimes of Ram confronting different demons, different Rakshasas, again with the same theme of helping us to overcome such tendencies that may exist within us, or obstacles that we may meet in the course of our path of bhakti. Let's see if there's some discussion. Looking for my glasses. Oh, thank you.
Maharaj, I have two questions. One
Yeah,
was I was thinking about how when the Lord appears in this material world, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkutam. So here, this pastime, I understand that he goes to one of the forests and then he gives the mercy,
yeah.
and then immediately he looks at the Viradha and then he kills him. Both ways, when he love for devotees and also kills the Viradha as a demon, right? So I don't know. In this way, Lord Ramachandra has done so many killings to take care of the devotees. Um, I don't know how many he killed
Many.
compared to Lord Krishna. That was one thought. The second thought was you mentioned something about the fault finding. The fault finding, suppose I know it's fault finding is wrong, but if a devotee he finds a fault in another devotee to correct him in such a way he can do a better service. What do you? Is that
And
okay?
that's not fault finding.
Okay.
That's there's a difference between discrimination and fault finding. Discrimination is a function of intelligence. You can see what's what. You can see this from that. That's IQ tests are the capacity to discern one thing from another thing. That's an intelligence function. So we should know what's right and what's wrong, what's this and what's that. That's an intelligence function. So fault finding is not in the mood of helping someone do their service better. Fault finding is not with that mood. It's just criticizing, not in the mood of how to make things better. That doesn't fault finding doesn't make things better.
And another thought was when the Lord kills a demon, most of the times I've seen that they get liberation. But in this pastime, he just goes back to the previous wherever he's supposed to go. Gandharva as a Gandharva. He did not get any liberation.
Um, there's several things to say, like Nalakavera and Manigriva, for example. They weren't killed, but they had an aspiration to return to their heavenly position. The Gandharva had an aspiration to return to his Gandharva position, and that was the benediction given to him by Kuvera, and so it was upheld by the Supreme Lord. The benediction of Kuvera is upheld. He'll go back to his position as a Gandharva. So when that is one's aspiration, and when the word of a demigod is made, then the word of the demigod is upheld by the Lord, and the aspiration of the person is fulfilled.
He just fulfilled the order of the curse of Kuvera.
Yeah, he's not going to transgress. I'm sorry, Kaveri, he's not going to go back to his Gandharva post. He's going to come to me. He doesn't contradict. So, but those are our Bhagavad understanding and the Mahabharata understanding, for example, also have similar contrasts. Like, for example, when the Pandavas died, they had to see hell. That's not in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is in their self-same bodies, they went to the spiritual world. So there's some scriptures are emphasizing dharma and adharma and abide by dharma without the same superlative emphasis on transcendence. Take shelter of the personality of Godhead. Rather, dharma, adharma. And by, you do dharma and you go to heaven, you go to the good place. So that's a point of emphasis within the text. It's not, so that's Mahabharata. And then with Ramayana, it's not exactly the same, but something similar. That is to say, there's a lot of this going to heaven thing and falling from heaven to earth and so forth. There's not the same emphasis as in the Bhagavatam of transcending birth and death, transcending any destination within this created realm. Bhagavatam has that emphasis. And Ramayana doesn't seem to have that same emphasis. Now, your question specifically was, where he went. Was he liberated or not liberated? Not liberated, although killed. His aspiration was what it was, and he got his aspiration.
Maybe in that way, Lord Chaitanya's mercy is much better.
Yeah, become a Gora Bhakta. Anything online?
Mohan Lila Prabhu is asking, the question is in the context of hypocrisy. In our role of doing services, we sometimes have to speak in lectures.
And sometimes what?
Give lectures. Give classes.
You speak what?
Speak in Sunday Feast Talk or
giving classes.
Yeah.
Okay.
In doing so, there are areas where we are not at the level of standard the topic calls for. In situations like that, is it better not to speak on such topics where we are struggling?
No. I mean, where are we qualified? At what level are we qualified to speak about anything? So we speak for purification. Now, you could put a preamble before, I haven't realized any of this, but I'm speaking what I've heard from my spiritual master in the scripture. But you don't have to say that as a preamble. It's understood. It's our purification repeating the words of scripture and Prabhupada. So that's what we do. If that was the bar, you don't speak anything, you don't speak on a topic that is above your realization, we'd be pretty silent. We're speaking for purification. Just like what I'm doing. Like Viradha and what is he, all these. But we're relying upon the acharyas and the perfected souls, and we're trying to represent transparently as best we can their message. That's what we're supposed to do. Just like this speaker that's sitting here in the middle of the room. It doesn't have to have realization of anything. It's just transmitting the message.
Neeraj Prabhu is asking, how was the demon able to touch Mother Sita?
There's different answers to that question. Same as, how is it possible for Ram to touch Sita? Because he's a demon. In relation to Viradha touching Sita, I mean, there's text in Valmiki Ramayana where Ram says, just to see that Sita is being touched by another man, how can I live? She's my life and soul. So I don't have an answer. With Ram, there is a specific answer. It's Maya Sita. With Ravana? Yeah, Ravana. It's Maya Sita. Specifically with Viradha, there's no commentary that gives the answer to that I'm aware of, so how is it possible? One of the Sri Vaishnavacharyas says, as Tumburu, he was a worshipper of Lakshmi. So he saw Lakshmi, he saw Sita as Lakshmi, and he wanted the purification of actually touching Sita as the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, his worshipable deity. In any case, purification must have taken place. Just like by touching the touch of Ram's foot, he became purified. Why not by the touch of Sita he became purified? The only explanation that aside from the switcheroo, the real Sita disappears and a Maya Sita appears, it's not possible for a demon to have contact with Sita other than an illusory covering of Sita is provided instead of Sita. It's not possible. Because otherwise, in fact, he would have become purified. So I don't have a clear answer other than because there's no commentary of acharyas that I'm aware of. I'll see if I'll do. I have some devotees that are really knowledgeable in this these kinds of topics and see what we can come up with. I'll research a bit, see if there's some commentary on this specifically. But the only thing that makes sense, third time, is a covering of Sita was protecting her, not that the actual goddess of fortune, Sita Devi, could be touched by Viradha. Not possible. Okay.
And the second part of that question is, how did Viradha lift the Supreme Lord Ram and Lakshman?
Well, without their willingness, he can't. But with their willingness, he can.
And Stira Mataji is asking, how is hypocrisy different from false gurus?
Well, in this specific case, hypocrisy is within oneself, and false gurus is something. So that's outside of oneself. Now, if there's someone is a false guru, someone is a pretender that's not a true guru, that's a hypocrite. But so this is speaking of tendencies within oneself, not false teachers and false teachings. Okay.
Amara Mataji is asking, is there any specific significance that Lord Krishna and Lord Ram both very first killed a demoness?
There is an answer to that. There's a devotee who's first I'll say it negatively. Searching and searching and searching and asking learned persons, there's no explanation. And then there's a devotee in India somewhere. He's translating a Bhagavatam commentary by Hari Suri. Not Hari Sori, but Hari Suri. And Hari Suri is a near contemporary of Jiva Goswami, a Gaudiya, a worshipper of Lord Chaitanya, whose teachings are, whose commentary is similar to Lord Chaitanya's teachings, wasn't apparently well known by our line. No indicate anyway. Besides the history of this person, because I was real concerned about the source, Hari Suri's commentary. But Hari Suri gives some commentary which I can't remember. And I don't have my computer, so I can't look it up. I'll look it up, and I'll give it to one of you two, and you can forward it to the online people. And specifically, you can send it to her. Okay?
And Amara Mataji's second question is, how can we help if someone exhibits a hypocritical behavior?
How can we help if someone
exhibits hypocritical behavior?
Well, it depends on the person, how you can help the person. If there is a suitable relationship with the person, in the proper time, proper place, proper circumstance, you can recognize, regret, rectification, reinstatement, to go through those stages. If somebody's not recognizing they're being a hypocrite, it's that with the right relationship to help them somehow understand this is something that's happening. And then so those 4 R's: recognize, regret, rectification. So if someone recognizes, gosh, I have this tendency, then it makes it a lot easier. And they feel badly that they have that tendency. So then the rectification part becomes possible. But so the beginning part, maybe just get somebody to recognize this tendency is there. I mean, it's not easy to correct. Hypocrisy is not easy to correct. So when it has purity, when it has the right relationship with the person, then it might be possible to have it recognized and then regret it, and then make a plan for rectification.
Sundari Leela Mataji is asking.
Who?
Sundari Leela Mataji.
Oh, okay.
Yesterday's.
Yeah.
I feel demons are blessed.
Ha!
They're all getting mercy of the Lord. These pastimes give me a lot of faith that Lord will correct us if we do some wrong move.
Good.
Please correct me, Maharaj, if my interpretation is wrong.
Well, we want that which is favorable to Krishna. That's bhakti means. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. We want that which is favorable to Krishna. Now, why? Because Krishna is so kind, even those that are not favorable, Krishna is kind. What to speak of those that are acting favorably towards Krishna? She will become more deserving of Krishna's favor than those that are not thinking of Krishna's pleasure because of his kindness. If I understood her comment correctly, wow, they're really special people. They get Krishna's mercy. So become a demon and get Krishna's mercy. Become a devotee, you get more mercy.
And Jyotirmaya Mataji has a question. How to understand the difference between duplicity and hypocrisy?
They're almost the same. Duplicity and hypocrisy. As far as I can understand. There's probably some subtle difference, but they're practically the same.
Kasturi Manjari Mataji is asking 2 questions. First question about Vasudeva stage. Does one get to this stage after Anartha Nivritti when one is...
Yeah, it's complete pure. It's Shuddha, complete pure, Vasudeva state.
How to get over tendency to find faults in others?
Anartha Nivritti. The mode of service. So, we'll go back again. Fault finding is not is without the idea of being in service. Discriminating is seeing one thing from another thing, and I want to be of service to this, to others. Because what is there that exists in this world that's without fault? If it was without fault, it'd be otherworldly. Within this world, there's fault. So when heart is pure, then one can see, but see beyond. The intrinsic nature of the soul is to be engaged in service to Krishna. How can I be supportive of that, which will help overcome the fault? Then it's not fault finding. It's service.
Amritakeli Mataji is writing, similar to Lord Ramachandra encountering demons, I am also facing the demons within my own mind or heart. Lord Rama, being the Supreme, is able to kill those demons, but being a conditioned soul, I feel weak and at times just feel like giving up everything when faced with these demons of anarthas in my heart.
Well, fortunately for you, Krishna is there. You don't have to give up. You just take shelter of Krishna. That's the much better option. And then there's strength beyond your wanting to throw your hands up in the air and saying, I can't, too much. Take shelter of Krishna, then it's not too much. That's it.
Maharaj, Viradha had an opportunity, and he was his mercy Lord put his foot on the neck of on his body, and he got that mercy though. But you also mentioned for us, I don't think Krishna will come and do it for us. So what is the way we can get that mercy?
She's going to send you that purport. Huh? It's sent already. Who has given? For what? The first. Okay, let's hear it.
This is from Hari Parshad Prabhu, ISKCON Shastric Advisory.
Yes, that's the translator. But that's the translator. The source is Hari Shuri. Go ahead.
Regarding the question, among all the commentators of the Bhagavatam, only Sri Hari Suri has given an explanation. He says that the first obstacle that any sadhaka comes across in his spiritual life is his desires, asha, for various material objects, namely association of opposite gender, etc. This term, asha, is feminine in gender. It is feminine entity, and it is the root of all other anarthas in spiritual life. For this reason, the destruction of inauspicious feminine entities is needed at the very beginning.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? We're ready to wrap up. Srila Prabhupada ki 对。